Well, the author and columnist Jake Wallis Simons is with me now. He's the author of Israelophobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It. Jake, is this just to do with a political problem, or is there a wider context here?
I think the political problem is a big part of it. If you look at the cabinet members and MPs who are pushing for this, many of them have large Muslim demographics in their own constituencies. Shabana Mahmood, for example, Birmingham, Ladywood has 46% Muslim population. West Streeting, with his razor-thin majority,
he nearly lost. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
has 23% Muslim.
Yeah.
So I think that has a lot to do with it. But ultimately, he's playing to the gallery. He's saying to his Labour voters, please don't go and vote for a Gaza independent at the next opportunity. Please don't go and vote for Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana. Please stay with Labour. We're going to take your concerns seriously. It's interesting that, you know, Hamas over the last couple of years have reported 115 deaths from malnutrition. Whether or not that's true, we don't know. But in Ethiopia, in this year alone, there have been almost 75,000 deaths of malnutrition. In Bangladesh, up to 100,000. In Angola, 35,000. There isn't the same level of concern for those deaths of malnutrition. So it is a political thing first and foremost. Now, in terms of recognising a Palestinian state, quite how that will help get more aid to more people, I don't know. It's notable that recognising a Palestinian state is offered to them as a reward. In fact, those are the words that Peter Cardwell, the science secretary who we've just been talking about, used. He said it was the Palestinians deserve a reward of statehood, and yet there's no requirement placed on them at all. At the very least, the Palestinians should be required to A, renounce terrorism, and B, recognise the existence of the State of Israel in order for statehood to be granted to them. But those demands are nowhere to be seen. They're going to be rewarded effectively for October the 7th, while the Israelis are taking all the blame effectively for the disaster of October the 7th and the subsequent war, for the lack of aid. We know that a big part of the responsibility for the lack of aid to Gazans lies with the UN, which has been failing to deliver aid that the Israelis have put into the Strip because they're cross with the Israelis, don't want to work with them.
And Jake, at least some of the problem with this is Israel's making, is it not? At least some of the issue in regard to getting aid in and the problems with that and the blockade that has been there for the last few weeks has been Israel's fault, has it not?
Of course, Israel definitely has to bear some responsibility, but I would say that that responsibility lies in failure or in incompetence, in struggling with an impossible situation, rather than any intention to make to enforce starvation upon the Gazans. Israel faces a difficult situation whereby Hamas has been stealing aid, using that money that it makes from selling the aid to keep itself afloat and keep itself in power.
So what do you make of the New York Times report a few days ago that said that Hamas was not systematically receiving and stealing aid from UNRWA and other UN bodies?
Well, sadly, it strikes me as an example of propaganda, because we've seen video footage after video footage of Hamas doing that exact thing, of mounting the aid convoys, stealing aid, holding up people.
The New York Times was citing Israeli military officials.
Well, look, the New York Times is just articulating propaganda coming out of the Strip. It's very, very clear that Hamas is stealing aid. That's been an open fact for many, many years now, at least since October the 7th. It's an open fact, it's been well documented, and it's been filmed. So quite where they got that idea from which security source, it's not true, it's untrue. They also published, by the way, that picture of that allegedly starving baby, that awful photograph of that baby, the harrowing picture of the baby, that skeletal baby who turned out to actually have an endemic congenital health disorder. And so, you know, it's not exactly a squeaky clean publication, sadly, as every single publication and every broadcaster, particularly on the left, seems to have a fondness for articulating Hamas propaganda and not for the facts.
Yeah, there is a lot, of course. There are starving people in Gaza. We need to get that sorted. Do you think that Keir Starmer is right to hold a cabinet meeting about it this afternoon, an emergency one?
Well, like I say, I mean, you know, there are far bigger examples of starvation around the world. I just mentioned some of them. He doesn't hold emergency meetings about those. But I understand the political pressure. And of course, the suffering in Gaza should be recognised. It's not like I'm trying to downplay it or ignore it. It's right that we need to address that. And it's right that something needs to be done. But I think his mistake is in placing all of the blame upon Israel for this. Israel didn't ask for this war, didn't start this war, hasn't occupied Gaza since 2005 when it unilaterally withdrew. Israel mustn't shoulder all of the blame for this. It's trying its best to feed the civilians while combating Hamas. It's working against a terrorist organisation that uses the starvation of its own civilians as a propaganda campaign, hand in glove with the UN. I mean, if you ask me, the fact that the UN has failed to deliver tons and tons of aid that Israel has delivered to Gaza, to the people who need it, if that's not a war crime, I don't know what is.
Closer to home, Gary Lineker, the former Match of the Day presenter, has admitted he was sacked from the BBC after sharing the pro-Gaza video likening supporters of Israel to rats. I mean, we thought this was the case. He says that he is not for the killing of children, always good to have to clarify that, and he says he's not an anti-Semite. Do you believe him?
Well, look, I always find it difficult to say that I'll look into somebody's soul and divine whether they're an anti-Semite or not. Certainly, Gary Lineker swims in the swamp of left-wing inflammatory material, both online and amongst his peers. The people he hangs out with, the stuff he comes out with, it's obviously taken from propaganda. And, you know, if you're on the left, that's your misfortune. You're going to be surrounded by this stuff. It's difficult enough for somebody who's not on the left to remain impervious to the propaganda because the weight of it is so extreme on social media in particular, but also on many of our broadcasters and some of our papers. But if you're on the left, it's very difficult to resist those narratives that are pushed with so much tenacity by vested interests. I guess he's just fallen victim to it like everybody else.
I am anti the killing of children, says Gary Lineker. As I say, always good to have to clarify that point. Jake, thanks for joining us today. Jake Wallis Simons, author and columnist, author of Israelophobia, the newest version of The Oldest Hatred and What to Do About It.